Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk with NP Student. I am Dr. Patrice, the founder of NP Student, where we keep you updated with every aspect of your life in and out of school. Today, we are talking early preparation tips for NP students. For with early preparation tips, you can set yourself up confidently to take your board exam. Joining us today is Dr. Brittany Weinstock. Welcome, Dr. Brittany. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. So, just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about Dr. Weinstock. She's a family nurse practitioner and the founder and CEO of the Nursing Studio. She has assisted over 2,500 reviewers internationally to successfully pass boards. And I believe that number has changed since we last had Dr. Weinstock. She's
Yes.
been coined as the test taking tactician as she makes content easy to learn and retain. The nursing studio has a 99% passing rate and is accredited provider of the American Nurses Credentialing Center. So now, before we get started, we know that we have a different type of audience who are tuning in, and we want you to drop your where you are and your nurse practitioner journey in the chat. So if you are newly accepted nurse practitioner student, put new. If you're second year nurse practitioner student, put two. And then also, to as we get ready to move on into the interview, I wanted to remind you to get your free checklist, your NP student checklist, so you can download everything you need in order to transition seamlessly from RN to NP student. Okay, so again, we are getting ready to talk about the early preparation tips for NP students. And let's just start off with the obvious. Dr. Weinstock, tell us a little bit about how you became the test taking strategist.
Well, hello again, everyone. I became the test taking tactician and strategist back in 2015. I was taking boards myself. I did not pass on my first attempt, but I was also teaching RN students at that time. So I was always known for my mnemonics and my fun ways for them to retain information. So they always talked to me about Dr. Weinstock, you should do this. Ms. Weinstock, you should do that, for other students. And I'm like, hey, I need to use it for myself. So at that time, that's what I did. And so I had to take it back to the drawing board, sit down, go back and start fresh. And then I started doing it for other people. And like we mentioned, I've helped over thousands um, of review students to pass boards with those strategies. And that's where the name came along from my students, honestly.
Awesome. And then I know you had mentioned before, because we've actually had you as a guest in the past, and you have this unique story about you after not having a successful first attempt, which allowed you really with that to transition into being this. I like to call you a guru with test taking strategies. But one of the things that I really wanted to move on to, because this is a question that so many students ask, and I want to make sure I ask it correctly, is like, how can students, like, really, what can they do now to approach the test taking anxiety? Because that's really one of their biggest challenges. Some students say, hey, you know what, I've studied so hard for the test, and then when I get it, I freeze. Can you share with us a few ways they can approach it?
Yes, yes, yes. And that's one of the things that I like to discuss with students because test anxiety does have a play. And a lot of people don't realize until they're actually there how severe, their test anxiety is. But I say start from the beginning. Start practicing, start incorporating breathing techniques as you study. You know the saying, practice makes perfect. So as you're reviewing content, as you're doing practice questions, as you're doing those test style, like with 175 questions, pace yourself and start to do those breathing techniques to kind of help you along so that it's second nature when you take boards. I also say to over prepare. Sometimes, it's so much content that we'll review things and we're like, yeah, I know that. But no, I say you need to know everything like the back of your hand. So when you get into that anxious mode, it's second nature to default to that, so to speak. almost like when you're skilled in things and you go into your fight or flight, you go into those things that you know naturally. And so I want it ingrained so much into you that even when you're doing your breathing techniques, as you're pacing yourself, pause, use those breaks that they allow and a lot during the exam, but also start to prepare for that anxiety now.
And one of the things that you mentioned was like breathing techniques. Can you give us some like real life examples of how you've coached a student to incorporate that in preparation for a test?
hmm And so I always say pace it based on you and your personal what works best for you, I should say.
Okay.
But I don't have a specific strategy. I say more so that, hey, if you're, you know how you start to notice that you're getting anxious or you're noticing that flustering feeling, to start to pause, because a lot of times what we do is we start to either just click an answer, mark an answer, and you're increasing that anxiety. I say, hey, pause for a second, take a deep breath, regroup. I also say in those, you heard of the practice sheets that you can do, because they give you those scratch sheets to do that and to practice writing these things out. So after you're breathing and you're trying to kind of get yourself back on track and back on pace, that you can kind of look at that as a reference point on the exam to kind of get you back into the groove, kind of having that resource to trigger you back into that calming state helps.
And so with when they apply those techniques, usually how long should they do it? Should they just do it until they feel better? Because those tests are usually time.
Mhm, mhm. So, and that's the tricky part. So that's what I tell students. So as you're practicing, when you're doing your practice questions and you're preparing for boards, I say just give yourself a moment. Don't make it a thing, so to speak, because I
Mhm.
feel like that also builds anxiety. So I say just try to make it second nature to when you're looking at whatever may have, switched you at that point, to pause. If you feel like it's like, okay, wait a minute, my anxiety level is here. Again, you can pause for a second. They will allow you to step away if you need to. Step away if it's that bad. But remember, you are timed. So I always say just incorporate all of those things, consider all of those factors, but don't get hung up because the time is ticking. The time is
Okay.
ticking. So just make
Understood.
it breathe. Inhale, exhale, regroup.
Regroup. Because one of the things that I noticed in academia is that sometimes when students are not too familiar with the concepts, and that's why we are here today. We're like part of that early preparation tips is to making sure that you are intentional about understanding the material, because many of those things are knowledge based, but some are application. What's your take on that?
Absolutely. So, my review students know that is something that's one of my soapboxes. We know that you have a knowledge. You didn't make it this far without having any knowledge of this. Of course, we need to build on content. Of course, you need to continue to study. Of course, you need to be able to excel and know these things well. But a lot of times the issue is applying the knowledge. I was speaking to them about this recently, actually. Um, During one of my consultation calls, and so I came back to tell my group of students about it. But a lot of times we've been in practice already as a nurse before we have, moved on to a nurse practitioner. And although we know textbook versus real life, we still easily do it because it's second nature, right? So what happens is you'll often think of it in the format, if they, whatever the condition is, you're just thinking of like, bam, I know it's that, bam, how do you treat, so to speak. But I tell them, hey, I need you to slow down and think of those areas that you do naturally. What allowed you to know that? How did the person present? We get so in the groove because we do it naturally, because it's second nature. We've done it for so long, and that's just our nursing judgment, that you kind of cruise through that when you're studying. And so when the test comes, it doesn't trigger you to apply it that way. And so that's why I say you strengthen that muscle as well when you're studying, because that preparation is key. preparation, when you are over prepared, when you're in a critical situation, the anxiety is in place, you're able to execute still in that fashion. And I also like to throw in that if you have anxiety that's more severe, there are additional options. You can reach out to those testing centers and get adjustments. They even have areas where you can sit where they'll do white noise for you. So if it's that severe for you, make sure you're using your resources. Don't be afraid to speak up for yourself so that you can have the adequate settings so that you can be successful.
I would like to add on to that. I also feel like they should let, usually there's like a supplemental instructions department at most universities to let them know if they need any type of accommodations. Are you familiar with that process?
I don't know the exact process, but that I do know that that is a thing and it is in place, so that you can do it while in school, as
Mhm.
well as so that you can have the resources on how to navigate outside of school.
Okay, understood.
Mhm.
So what I hear you saying is that basically how they should approach preparing for boards is to just really take their time and prioritize how they go about the material so they don't feel overwhelmed.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, well, this has been great. Again, for those who are tuning in with us, we are talking early preparation tips for NP students with Dr. Brittany Weinstock, the founder at the Nursing Studio. And Dr. Brittany, I know that you have like quite a bit of resources and wanted to just talk about some of the things that you have now that students as well as schools has subscribed to. If you can tell us a little bit about what they've used to accompany them in preparation for boards.
Absolutely. So I kind of build in different areas. So my YouTube channel is one of those immediate things, or my social media panels where you can review at your own pace. You'll see the tools and things, various videos to give you those tidbits and how to apply it for boards in practice, how to study different that you can utilize. Because the review book is broken down in the fashion that I'm telling you to take that knowledge and apply it. You can find that on Amazon. You can search my name. Various books. The latest edition, the third edition, is the one that just recently came out. And we also have online review courses, in-person review courses. So tons of options. Universities have incorporated some of those tools or having me on to teach their classes. A lot of students sometimes just want to get some of their classmates involved, and so their university will do our group rate and get us in to do things of that nature. So there's various options. So yes, we're here to help. We have some flashcards that are up and coming, so many resources that try to meet each individual where you are.
And one of the things is that you mentioned you have flashcards getting ready to come out. Congratulations, by the way. That really calls to though that kinesthetic learner. I'm a kinesthetic learner.
Mhm.
So I've mentioned on other talks that I've gone live on. It's like the importance of learning your learning, their learning style, learning your learning style is kind of redundant, but understanding it. And there's different tests. Do you incorporate any of that in your preparation for your board exam? So for board prep?
Absolutely. So I am a kinesthetic learner as well. And I tell people this to understand your learning style also when deciding which board exam to take,
Mhm.
because it also helps because of how the exam is delivered. And I'm speaking of AANP versus ANCC. A lot of times that helps students because of the variety of testing styles on the ANCC. So I like to put that out there as well from that standpoint. But my review material is designed for learners that way too. So I like to have things for my learners. If you're a visual learner, there are images, there are videos, there are mnemonics. I put it in a fashion that you have the audio, you have the visual, you have the written style, so that it is meeting each learner where you are. That's where the flashcards come in. I try to incorporate all those levels to help you along the way.
Well, we've covered quite a bit, Dr. Weinstock. We would love to have you again later on in the semester. One of the things I like to do is always recap some of the tips that you've provided us. And one of the first thing is you mentioned about getting familiar with the tests and the content to help minimize feeling overwhelmed. And you also mentioned incorporating some breathing or relaxation strategies. Did you have anything else that you would like to say to the students today and those who are tuning in before we go?
I just say start now. Start where you are. Don't overwhelm yourself, but don't take lightly from where you are currently. Be present in it and build on that knowledge, because when you get to the time that it is time to prepare for boards, all of this will start to come together. So just build on that, because if not, that's where the overwhelm factor comes in. Make this into small studying and review materials, so your notebooks and things that you are jotting down as you go. Save that, put it in a fashion, make it your duty to do it now, and it will help you tremendously in the end. One of my, again, my key is to over prepare, and starting now will help you to do that, and to prepare in the fashion of the state where, if you do have test anxiety, and I say that in a fashion of, when you're taking exams in school, act as if stage. Use that as the practice, use that as the rehearsal, so to speak, before it's time to perform, right? So those are just my little tips, and do things in small increments, and it'll all come together.
That's a great way to close us out. And one of my sayings is you practice what you practice.
That's right.
So I felt like everything that you have provided us today has been very invaluable for those who are tuning in. Please let us know how this information has helped you by commenting in the chat, telling us where you are from, also placing if it's a replay, and also tell us where you are in your NP journey. Again, thank you, Dr. Weinstock, for joining us. Thank you all for tuning in. I am Dr. Patrice Little, and you have just watched Let's Talk with NP Student, and we will see you